All right, so please, I'm recording. I don't want to have to yell at this class like I did at other classes during recording. It doesn't sound good on this.
They can hear us?
They hear me yelling. Yeah.
They can't hear us?
Not nor maybe a little bit. Like can't really make it out. Like go back. Clearly, you've never listened to her.
No.
I feel like
So,
the girl who's on the left.
and sometimes you get some of that going on too. So yeah, you can hear some interesting conversations sometimes
I
between
really want to
students.
know what happened with it.
So we already did one. Again, we said the answer was the number if we plug it back in. For an equation, it would make the left side equal the right side. And I did an example. I'm not going to do it over again for the recording. But for the second one, we said if you have two variables in one equation, you can't solve. You can't tell me what x and y equal. Because there's too many different things they could equal. Because you could change one, but then change the other one and still have the left side equal the right side. So as an example, we use this word problem. We said, all right, well, if I'm buying, well, actually, Aubrey was buying some airheads. And Aubrey didn't know how many airheads he was going to buy. So therefore, if he doesn't know how many airheads he's going to buy, he doesn't know what his total cost is yet. He does know he's going to buy one icy. So we could say the equation is the total cost, which is y, equals 0.75, which is the cost of one airhead, times x, which is the number of airheads. So again, y would be total cost, x is how many airheads. And then we know we're going to buy an icy, so we would just add this plus 1 on the end. That's the cost of one icy. Well, we can't solve for x and y. We don't know how many airheads. We don't know the total cost. We know a bunch of possible answers, like maybe he buys 0 airheads and then therefore he spends $1. So that's a possible answer, but we don't know that's the answer. Maybe he buys 1 airhead and he spends $1.75. Another possible answer. So there's a bunch of possible answers. We don't know exactly which one he's going to choose and what our final total is going to be. But what we said we could do is we could graph it. We could graph all the possible answers. Now here's the part that I wanted to spend a little more time on today, because we went through it fast yesterday and I know we weren't fully getting it, not everybody at least. This line that I graphed represents that equation, that y equals 0.75 plus 1. That's literally how we would graph it if we said the intercept is 1, because that's the number all by itself. So that's the y-intercept. And the slope is 3/4. So we would go over 4, up 3, and we'd be right there. That's how we graphed yesterday. We're going to do more of that, so if you didn't follow that, don't worry about it yet. That's how we created that line. There was actually another way we did it, but we're going to go with that's how. What we didn't really go into a lot of detail on, although we talked briefly about it, that line represents every possible combination of airheads and total cost. Every one. Any possible combination. So give me a number of airheads you could buy.
71.
No.
Well, on that graph. I could draw a bigger graph.
No.
3.
8.
3.
Eight's not really on that graph.
3. 6.
So 3
7.
is on there. Somebody said 7. We'll do both of them. So I could go through and plug into that equation the number of airheads, do the math, and come up with the total. But I don't need to. You might, on a test, I might not even give you an equation. I might just give you the graph. No word problem, no equation. I might just give you the graph. You need to understand this line is the answer. It's actually all the possible answers, but if I give you a specific scenario, it's the answer is on that line. So if I said, how much does it cost if he buys 3 airheads? Well, there's where 3 airheads is. This is the number of airheads down here. How many airheads he buys? It's the x value. That's the x-axis, so x is the number of airheads. Well, if he buys 3 airheads, I just got to figure out, well, what point on this line is where 3 airheads is? Well, that's where 3 airheads is, because it's right above the 3. Because the line is all the possible combinations of airheads and total cost. So if he buys 3 airheads, the x value is 3. That's how many airheads. Y is the total cost, so I just got to figure out what is the y value for that point. Like if I were just to label a point. We did that last week. We labeled points on the graph. That was your exit ticket. So what's the Y value for that point on the graph?
2.
Approximately.
2 2.25.
Like
Ooh,
315
not
or
2.25.
2.15.
Like, could be like 315 or 325.
Yeah, is it
Oh, I
three?
said
You seen
two.
the 3? You
Three,
did.
five.
Somebody else said 2.
I said 2. I meant 3.
It's 3. You
3.05.
see the
I
3
said
now?
3.
You see that though? I'm not worried about you getting it wrong. I'm worried about you understanding why it's 3.
3.05.
A little over 3.
I thought the 3 was the 2.
Technically, if I didn't give you the equation or the word problem, you really wouldn't know exactly what it is. You wouldn't know if it's 305, 310, 320, 330. Now we know how much airheads are. So if you think about it, if airheads are 75 cents, the only possible numbers you could end with is 0.25, 0.5, or 0.75. So between those three,
0.25.
it would have to be 0.25. So it would be, the Y value would be 3.25. That's the total cost, is that second value, that Y value. We don't have to do any math. I mean, we could have. We could have plugged 3 in and done math. We don't have to, though. We can just look at the graph and say that, well, I know the line. That line is all my possible combinations of the number of airheads and then the total cost. So again, somebody else said a number earlier that I'm going to give to somebody else. Zaid, what if I bought 6 airheads? How much would it cost?
You said 6, right?
6 airheads. What's the first thing you need to find if you're trying to figure this out?
They said that's like 75 cents.
That's not quite, yeah, 550. Because again, here's 6 airheads. So if I bought 6 airheads, I need to figure out on the line, where is that value of Y for an X of 6? Well, here's 6, so that's my X value of 6 right there. And then I'd come over here and it'd be right in the middle. So 550. Because again, we know it can only be 25 cents, 50 cents, or 75 cents. So it's definitely not either the other two. It's got to be 50. So that point then, that ordered pair, would be 6, comma 5.5. 6 being the number of airheads, 550 being the total cost. So every possible combination on that line is an answer to that equation. The left side will equal the right. And it's an answer to the question of, well, if I buy this many airheads, how much money do I spend?
I think we have taxes.
Except for the fact that that's not realistic.
Yeah, but it's got-
Why is that not? Nope, nothing to do with taxes. Let's say that after tax it was 75 cents. What's wrong theoretically with that?
Oh, we don't.
Graph
really
that
know,
line.
like,
I don't know if I mentioned it in here
They
yet.
started zero. Not even.
But I wouldn't start at 0. Well,
started-
technically I did start at
Yeah,
0.
you did.
I started at 0 airheads, and that was $1 because I bought the ice. But what's wrong with the graph? If I'm saying every single point on that line is an answer,
Oh, because it's in between the lines. It's like in the lines.
what do you mean?
Like
It's not in between lines. It's not equal.
I didn't realize you were a copycat. I would have thought you would have been more of a front runner than a copycat.
Okay, so
It's not in between the it's not in between the two squares. It's not
What do you
going
mean?
on- It's not going on the points, right?
You can go up there if you want.
Yeah. Right. It's not going through.
No, it goes. I mean, it's going through the
I know,
points that are
I-
solutions.
Because you ever have to meet the point.
No, it does start from 0 because 0 is the number of airheads.
But what
So
about
at
the-
0 airheads, we still spend $1 on icy. So
Yeah, so it's 75 cents.
39 cents what?
But don't we have to start at 75 cents because that's how much you get?
No, we start at $1 because we're buying the icy no matter what. We actually start at $1.
Oh, what about the airheads?
What is wrong with this real? Because this is a real life scenario. There's something sometimes wrong when you do a real life scenario.
Oh, you're estimating.
Not really estimating. There's something wrong with buying some of the numbers of airheads that were technically on that line. I'll just give you a big hint. What if I wanted to find out what that point is right there and figure out my total cost and the number of airheads? What's wrong?
Oh, that's between two. That's between two.
So how many airheads would I be trying to buy right there?
Not even like
half.
yeah.
Can I buy that many airheads? Can I go up to
No.
the front store and break one in half and say I want to buy one? No. So for a real world scenario like airheads, this doesn't actually map perfectly. Now, every point on the line is an answer to that equation. That is true. Every point on that line would make that right side equal the left side. Problem is, we're not going to have every value for x available. We're only going to have integers available because you can only buy, and no negative numbers too. That's kind of the other thing. We would never have negative values for x either because we can't buy negative airheads. So there's really only certain solutions that could be a solution to this. So just kind of, again, that's nothing super important for this class, but next year that's the kind of stuff that they're going to get into and talk about in the full year of algebra, as well as when you take the end of course exam. They'll ask you questions like that, and you have to have an understanding of what's truly going on. Yes? You have an exit ticket on Thursday for this class. And everything we do today is the core part of the exit ticket. We'll add a little bit on Thursday before it, but I won't grade that one super, super strict. And then there'll probably be one or two things I pull from old stuff that'll be quick, easy stuff, like maybe a simple equation, maybe a two-step equation and a three-step equation. But then the bulk of it will be what we do today. Again, this will be recorded. Yesterday was recorded, so you have a bunch of stuff you can watch if you're still struggling. Any questions on any of that? If you don't have rise over run written as the formula for slope, you should. We did this last class, but that's the formula for slope. We're about to use it in the graphing. All right, so we talked about slope and y-intercept. I said you need to write that down. You have got to be able to correctly pull from an equation the slope and the y-intercept. If you can't do that, you're never going to get a graph right, because it's based on you getting the correct slope and y-intercept. You see here, slope is the number in front of the x in red. Y-intercept is the number all by itself. It doesn't matter what order they are in. I could give you this equation here. You don't just automatically say, oh, well, the slope is on the left, so that must be the slope. It has nothing to do with left or right. It has to do with what's the number in front of the x. Or, more correctly, it has to do with what number is being multiplied times the x. M is being multiplied times the x. -2 is being multiplied times the x. So -2 would be the slope. And remember, x is not part of the slope. Every class, a bunch of people writing x as one of the slope values or part of the slope. X is being multiplied times the slope. It's not part of the slope, it's being multiplied times the slope. That's why they're next to each other. That means multiplication. So when you're going to do an exercise in a minute where you're pulling the slope out of a bunch of equations, don't write x in the slope. It's not part of the slope. It's just being multiplied times the slope. And then again, the b would be the 3, no negative in front of it, so it would just be +3. It's the number all by itself. Any questions on that before you do the real? Shouldn't take real long. Quick activity on just pulling out slope and y-intercept. Anybody confused? Make sure you remember negative signs. That's the biggest thing I see a bunch of kids miss. This is a slope of -2. Whatever's in front of the number sticks with the number, glued to the number. That's pretty much always in there.
Negative slope to x.
Slope never has the x in there. You literally just said that 6 times. -2 is the slope. What did you say? I don't even know what you said actually. Felt like you said that the slope was -2x. You couldn't have possibly said that. Right? There's no way you would say that. Good. That's what I thought. All right. Here's what you're doing then. Some of you will be done with this in like a minute. Some of you might take a few minutes, but that's fine. Don't rush through it. It's not a race. You need to get it correct. If you can't get this correct, then you can't do the next step. So take one and pass it back, please. That is on 3. There's 4 in this row. Take one and then pass it back. See if that's 4. Take one. Hopefully, everyone can reach the timer. Take one and pass it back. Once you get it, you can start. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm still going to go over it, but you should Go quickly because I need to make sure you're able to do these. We'll pass one back to you, please. And I need one. So some of them are a little trickier than others because you only have one term. And you got to kind of figure out what the slope or what the y-intercept would be when you only see one term there. Like, so for example, there's one on there that's sort of similar to that. The slope is still the number in front of the x, but then what about that y-intercept? What would that be when you don't see something there? So I'll give you guys, again, shouldn't take a real long time. I'll give you 3 minutes. If you're done before that, I'll go ahead and check people that are done. Oh, not 3. As soon as you're done, just kind of raise your hand. I'll come and check it. I imagine some of you will be done well before the. This isn't, but it's directly related to what you need to do on the exit ticket.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it is a grade. I'm not like, it's not for a specific grade, but like, if you're sitting there not doing it, then I'm going to mark off. Like say, yeah, they put X in your name. X in your name. They didn't do this. So it's not like a specific letter grade. Like, have you ever seen, like, you see how some of these, like, X, checks are good, X's are bad. So if somebody's not doing it, I'll come back over and I'll write an X. So far today, everybody's done. It's not hard. So everybody's got to check.
It's not going to sleep.
No CPT.
No, so they're going to get, they're going to sleep.
You got stuff going on. I mean, I'll be easy on you, but you need to do this because this is the main thing on the exit.
I'm done.
Used to go to sleep.
I was gonna
Yeah,
get
that's
to
easy.
that.
You should be done with that in a minute.
I ain't got no time.
I gotta ride on me like this.
Where's
At
3.
your line.
there? Good. All right, so the 3 toughest ones are the only ones I'm really looking at. 31 is good. So this would be, you don't see a y-intercept, right? So it's 0.
No.
Perfect. But here, you see an x term. What are those? Good. You got a negative, but negative what? Gotta be a number there. Not a 0, because we do see an x. But down here you don't see an x, so it's 0. If you see an x, there you go. Remember, you see one x, so there's a 1. Everything else is good. Again, I have an x. It can't be that I have 0 x. Oh my goodness, Lauren, what did I just say about x and slope? 2 separate variables. We're in front of the x, not the slope. X is just x. It's going to be multiplied.
No, it's just the same way. If it's.
So watch out for your negatives. You look at some of them because you're not putting a negative.
So
There's
it'd
a
be
bunch of negatives in those.
Oh, okay, so.
This is correct. You don't see a line of sex with 0.
This is not another.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever's in front of the number sticks with the number. So you're missing some negatives on other ones.
I put a 1.
Do you see any x's?
1. Number 6. Number 6.
Yeah, are there any x's in that? So you don't see any x's. How many x's do you got?
Which one is?
Boom! You don't see
Oh,
any.
0?
That's what your slope is. You don't see any x's. You have 0 x's. So your slope is. Boom. Good deal. You do need to know how to do this. You can go back and watch the video. It's the negative sign and then whatever's in front of the x. All of that together is the slope. All of that together is the y-intercept. Doesn't matter what order they're in, it's still what's in front of it. Never. The x is never part of the slope. The x is being multiplied times. You are missing a ton of negative signs.
That's what my told me.
This is right. 0 is right there.
Oh,
What do you
Let's just talk down.
There's a ton of negative.
Mine looks really nice.
My stepdad went smack can't leave it. Yeah,
Oh,
only got those.
okay,
I had to go to the hospital because I had
Seven.
I still got the lump right here.
Oh, you need to work on this, bud. You need to
That's
work.
fine.
You need to write some stuff down so I can see if you're partially getting it. Again, the number in front of the X is the slope. This one.
Marquise, I know you like a
The
zero.
number you would be writing in all of these.
You ain't gonna know about
Now, it doesn't matter left and right.
that.
Sometimes the
Name one Jason Boyd.
in front of the.
Name one Jason Boyd.
So now, if it's a negative,
Okay, you got it right.
Just kind of.
Because I'm smart.
Jason versus Freddie. That's what the shirt is.
Whoa.
Whoa.
No.
My bio teacher questioned me about it.
Zero.
What movie is Freddie?
How many X's do you see there?
What movie is Freddie?
That's how you write it.
Friday night on the street.
I don't know.
No, no, that was a
slope.
Yes, that's Friday night.
No, I didn't.
Hey, I know.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Friday night on Elm Street.
It's funny because I was saying that this morning, like,
If there's not an X at all, then the
Jason
slope
versus
is
Freddie.
zero.
Freddie's
If there's an X, but there's no other
Or
number,
let him spice
then
it
the
up.
Y
I'm sure the
intercept.
13 movie shirt. I was like, they're the same
I
thing.
got you, I think I-
Or let's spice you up. Michael Myers.
Let's spice it up. I have like 3 horror movies.
Brandon.
How do you guys know?
Oh, you was it?
Good.
I just woke up.
Oh, boy, that's tough.
Negative one.
Zero, -1, those are the harder ones. Everything else. That was good.
Let's go.
Who's it?
Curtis.
I need to see yours. Did you give it another?
Snitching.
We'll do it.
Zero. Zero is good. We see an X.
Yeah.
There's something in front of that X. Not zero. If it was a zero, then we wouldn't even see the X at all, like here. We don't see an X there. That's when it's zero. If you see an X, what's the number of streets?
2.
No, you see a 2.
got it wrong.
It's the only number you don't see in front of that X.
I got it wrong.
He hasn't even looked at mine yet. Did I get him right, Mr. Gill?
You missed one Stevens.
Yeah, she must have. Hold on, one, guys.
Did I miss any?
Did I miss any?
No, yours was good.
Okay.
Then hold up. Is it 1X? No, it's
Yeah.
0.
Do you see an X there?
No? Yes.
Yeah, you do. How many X's do you see there?
1.
Literally, all you gotta think about is how many X's do I see? Oh, I see one X.
That was like
One X.
negative one X.
The only one left.
Wait a
Do
minute.
it. Said it was easy. It was like work.
Brandon, interview, journal.
All right, if you need to go somewhere, let me know, but you need to know how to do this, so watch these videos. I recorded yesterday, and this one's recording. So this is by far, the majority of what is on the quiz and what I will grade the most strictly on the quiz on Thursday. All right, so everybody I think is pretty good. Let's just fill it all in. So those of you that did not get it, head up, Zaid, Arquise, your head is up, so just fill it in. Everybody else, I think, got it. Tyler had it. I mean, his head should still be up. All right, so let's fill them in. Let's help them out. What's the first one?
-5 and -8.
So -5 and -8 was the first one in that order. So there you go. Write that in if you didn't have anything done. Next one.
2 and -1.
2 and -1. Next one.
3 0.
So again, if we don't see 2 terms, one of them has to be a 0. We don't see 2 terms there. You just got to figure out which one is the 0.
-1,
Next one.
-4.
If there's not a number in front of the X, then there's a 1 there.
-4.
-7,
If the X term is on the right, you still look at the X term for the slope. So it's -4 and then, oop, I was writing the wrong number.
-3.
And then -3.
It said -4.
0, -1. No,
So again, if we don't see an X, then 0 is the slope. -1.
-1, half and 4.
And then the last one again, the X term is on the right, but we still look there for the slope. -1/2. Not -4 though, +4. Brandon, did you say -4 or +4 for
That's a
last?
positive 4.
Okay. If you can do that right there, you should have no problem with graphing. I mean, the graphing part itself is not that bad. Plus, I give you a sheet that tells you exactly what to do to graph. That's the yellow sheet. So pull out your yellow sheet and your equation or your graphs. And I guess I can let you borrow. Yeah. So just give that back, because I don't have any more of those. Just you guys work together when you do the actual graphing. In all honesty, I don't think either of you, most of you will not need the sheet after you do it a couple of times. It's just kind of to get you going.
Can I work with the partner?
So again, yeah, you guys can work together today. That's fine. But again, you're the one that has to do the exit ticket on Thursday, so you need to learn it, not just be told what to do. So when we graph, I'm just going straight to the sheet. So pull this sheet out. This is the 2 pages. It says, what does it say?
It says graphing lines in slope intercept form.
There you go. You guys are not exactly together, but close. So pull that sheet out. The first one says y equals 1/4 x, subtract 1. I'll zoom in. Yeah. I guess. Can you? Yeah, you got it on your paper. You can see. All right. So once you've pulled out the slope and the y-intercept, so we're about to do that for the first problem. What is the slope for the first problem? And you probably have already done this one. I'm just kind of redoing the same problem again so that you still have the rest of them.
-1.
Then for the y-intercept, it's the number all by itself, including the negative sign. Once you've done that, you can now use the steps to go straight through it. So if we start at step 1, step 1 says, put a point on, and I'm not reading it exactly, it's got some other stuff in there. If you need to cross through the stuff that's in parentheses where it says x and y coordinate, that really doesn't mean anything. You can get rid of it. I was just explaining that every point on a graph is really an x and a y. That's all I was explaining when I said, I was giving you the definition of what a point is, basically. Point is an x and a y value. So if you want to cross through that, that's fine. It's not going to hurt you any. You don't really need it. So I need to start by putting a point on the y-intercept. I'm still getting this mistake a lot that I'm about to make. Yeah, I guess I'll make it. What is my y-intercept? We just said.
0.
-1.
We just said it. Where'd you get 0 from?
I don't know. I was thinking 0, so I just put 0.
That's the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept then? -1, right? It's the number all by itself. It's this piece right here is the y-intercept, just the number part. I need to put a point on -1. What did I do wrong?
Put it on the x.
It is called the y-intercept, so it goes on the y-axis, this axis, not on that axis. So that is wrong, 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 and yet I see multiple people do it every single class period, no matter how many times I go over it. I don't put it on the x-axis, I need to put it on the y-axis. Oops. Oh, there, now the y-axis. It goes, again, -1 goes on the y-axis at -1. That gets you some points on the graphing right there, just being able to do that first step. Well, I mean, I guess technically the first step was you pulled out the slope and the y-intercept. I don't always ask you to do that though. So sometimes I'll ask you to do it, sometimes I won't. But you need to know how to do it. Now, for the next piece of it, I don't know if I can... yeah, we can leave it there, that's fine. So for the next piece, it says in step 2, if you do not have a fraction for your slope. Well, I'm going to stop there because we do have a fraction for our slope. This is our slope. And we do have a fraction. So I'm going to skip step 2 in this one because I already have a fraction.
What if you don't? What are you supposed to do?
I'll show you really quickly. I showed you yesterday, but if you don't have a fraction like in this one, so in this one my slope is not a fraction. So what it tells you to do is make it into a fraction. And you do that every single time by putting it over +1. You don't ever put it over -1. That came up a few times last class, only in last class. So I need to put -3. I don't do anything to the -3. I just put it over +1. So now, and I'm not going to do that one for you. That's part of the problem. You need to figure out the y-intercept and then do the rest of it on your own. So we'll come back up to this one. So step 3 says once you've made it into a fraction, or if you already have a fraction, you need to write, and please do it exactly like this if you're struggling. If I get to you and you're not doing it this way, it makes me very angry when I tell you exactly what to do if you're struggling, but then people don't do it. Write rise over run right next to the fraction that you have that is the slope. Right, oh, I'm going to put a 1. So that's the formula for slope. This is the slope right here. So if this is the formula for slope, and this is the slope, that's why I put the equal sign. Because that's rise over run is equal to 1/4. The slope is equal to 1/4. But if you'll notice, now I have a run number and a rise number. So I can go ahead and figure out where my next point goes. So that was step 3. Now if I go to step 4, it tells me in step 4 exactly what I need to do. If you weren't here, look at step 4 and 5 and underline, or if you didn't do this, underline those 2 things. So I want you to stay through this because you need to see this. You need to see this because you didn't even do the last thing.
I did do it.
Well, you copied down what I did. You didn't do it. So I'm going to let you keep that sheet. That's fine. Just underline this on that sheet. It tells you what direction you need to go for the run, which is the bottom. It even tells you the run is the bottom number, which you should have written it as the bottom number anyway. And then it tells you which direction to go for the rise. If whether the rise is negative or positive, you go up or down depending on what the sign is. Got it? All right, so let's go back to this.
Where is that?
On the yellow sheet for number 4 and number 5. I thought you just did. There. So 4, if the run number is negative, you go left. If it's positive, you go right. 5, if the rise number is negative, you go down. If it's positive, you go up. No. Almost. You're so close. So here's the last step, and then you can go. So for you kind of do step 4 and 5 together. I broke them out separately, but really you're going to do 4 and then immediately do 5. So it says if in step 4, if the run number is positive, which it is in this problem, it says you go right. When I go right, I think about hopping to the next corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. It says and from there, I don't put a point yet, I'm not done yet. I go to step 5 and it says if your rise number is positive, you go up. Hop up 1. That's where I put my second point. Now I have enough to do the line. One quick note though, before I let you start working on it. There are some problems on here that will go off the graph when you do your rise and your run. If you just do it the way it's set up in the problem. If that happens, so you see, I'm going to get rid of this now. You see that the slope is 1/4, right? That's the slope in the problem. That's what we pulled out. As long as we keep the value of the slope as 1/4, we're good, because the slope is 1/4. If I'm going off the graph, there's a way that I can fix it to stay on the graph. I would just take the slope, not do that, and I would change the sign of both numbers, because -1 divided by -4 is still a positive number. It's still positive 1/4. But now instead of going right and up, I go left and down, which on some of these will keep you on the graph. So now I could say, okay, well, if my slope is -1 over -4, that means my run is -4, and again, if you look at step 4, it tells you negative means go left, and a negative rise means go down. So that lets you go in the opposite directions, and now you would stay on the graph for those other ones. And if you'll notice, these line up exactly. Like if I drew a line through them, I guess I could draw a line through them. If I drew a line through them, it would line up. That's not a perfect line, but okay, I mean, a little curvy in parts, but the latter section is okay. So you should be able to do all of them. If you get stuck on one, it's probably going to be on what is the slope, what is the y-intercept part, will be my guess. Use this sheet, because we just did several different types of examples on here that you can use to then figure out what the slope of the y-intercept should be. So Jamin, you can go ahead and go out. Trade your phone, please, and get back. All right, go.